With the recent-ish announcement of Hades 2, and with all the conversations spreading from person to person about how beloved this game truly is, I figured I'd step outside of my content comfort zone for a moment and strike the iron while it is reheated to give my thoughts on Supergiant's Hades. There are a lot of thoughts to give, so I'm going to try and keep this video as brief as possible, and in the interest of that, I'm going to cut right to the chase and say that I don't think I've ever fallen in love with a game as quickly as I did with Hades, in my life. Right off the bat, the concept of this game is genius. You play as Zagreus, the son of the game's namesake, the god of the dead in Greek mythology, and in typical angsty teen fashion, you are trying to break out of hell, home to the House of Hades, climbing through the various layers of hell from Tartarus to the Temple of Styx in order to reach the surface, finding out a few runs into the game that Zagreus is actually in search for his mother. His true mother, that is, not this fakey fake mother right here. The reason I call this concept genius is because it perfectly fits the genre of the game. The roguelike. You battle through hell, trying to get as far as you can before dying and returning back to the House of Hades, growing stronger each time. This game could be nothing else but a roguelike. It makes too much sense, and any niche of sense that isn't made is effortlessly shrugged off by the game because it is simply too cool to care about the finer details or mechanics of life, death, and fully prioritizes form over function in that regard. Ooh, and I haven't even talked about the characters yet. With each new character I interacted with in my first hour of this game, I grew more and more attached to the story and the relationships these characters could have, but also just to the characterizations themselves. What a brilliant move to have the entire cast of characters be already existing mythological figures, leaving the game to inject each with their own unique modernized flavor. You've got Poseidon, the obvious contender for cool surfer uncle. You've got Dionysus, the big brother type who likes to party, and who is actually also Zagreus, I think. I don't know, Greek mythology is weird. Even Hades himself fits the role of grumpy, disapproving father like a glove. The characters were there for the taking, and Supergiant just seized them. The characters are my favorite part of this game, hands down. You will genuinely feel excited to die just so you can go back and talk to all the different characters in the house and advance the story. Even after clocking in over 100 hours into this game, I have not lost one iota of excitement for each new line of dialogue, each little character interaction, or even their own story arcs which actually affect the gameplay. Oh yeah, and I haven't even talked about the gameplay yet. One of the first things that made me realize this game was going to take over my life was on my first run, when I faced my first enemy, made my first attack, and heard, "Ooh, this is going to be a good game." The combat is satisfying to an addictive degree, and although some of the weapons may genuinely pose a threat of arthritis, you will live for each, and especially each. The attacks feel so impactful, the combos and power scaling can make you feel borderline broken at times, but again, the game is simply too cool to care. It invites you to test its limits, to put it through its paces with every overpowered build, every combination of abilities that completely changes the way you think about clearing each room. You'll unlock a new weapon, or find a new boon granted by the gods, and think, well, this is clearly too much fun, there must be some kind of catch, but there isn't. Because the game takes place in a fantastical god-empowered setting, it can let loose with what is and isn't possible, without the player having to suspend their disbelief while putting all of the focus on pure, unfiltered fun. And God, this is a good game. While there is a mainline story that the player can follow well into 30 hours in without reaching the real ending, the game becomes less story-driven and more character-driven for the most part. There are specific lines of dialogue for reaching certain bosses with different upgrades, or even without upgrades at all. If you catch a fish, oh by the way, this game has fishing mechanics, the other NPCs in the room comment on it. A noble victory. The dialogue is so impossibly plentiful and in-depth, and makes no two runs ever feel the same, crafting a beautifully realized setting, all acting as the icing for the cake of the core gameplay. The combat is colourful, varied, and makes you truly feel like the son of a god that you are. Owed in part, no doubt, to the artists that made it feel so— oh my god, I haven't even talked about the art yet! Okay, let's set aside the obvious beauty of the art style for just a moment to talk about how impossibly consistent this game looks. Every little asset was drawn like it was to be submitted as an art student's final project, and yet 90% of it simply sits decorating the environment rather than holding center stage. It all conforms to the gorgeously unique cel-shaded art style that is not only impossible to replicate, but impossible to conceive of how it was even done in the first place. The thickness of every line of every asset is all in perfect proportion to the rest of the room. The extreme shading and bold neon colors are added everywhere they need to be. The blending of 3D character models with a 2D environment is genius not only for ease of game development, but for ease of identifying the enemies and characters against the bright backgrounds and particle effects. The art style of this game is so well executed and has so much love and talent poured into it that it can make you feel sad that a game of this quality will never come along again. This game was made by fewer people than you can count on 2 hands, and yet the passion put in from every person is so intense. This guy voiced Zagreus, the main character, while also voicing this guy, while also doing all the sound design and music for this game, which... oh yeah, I haven't even talked about the music! The sheer excellency of this game is reflected in my excitement still, after 100 hours, for each new character interaction, each new line of dialogue, each new wacky build that I've still yet to try, completing new challenges and achievements, making the game intentionally harder for myself so that this stupid skeleton will show me his statues, which for some reason I consider worth it because this game owns my life now. There are so many little story beats that I've still yet to discover, even after all this time which in a regular AAA would have seen everything the game had to offer 60 hours ago. I could write a book talking about every little thing I love about this game, and I would keep coming back after each play session just to add more pages. Instead of watching this video, you could be playing Hades right now. If that's not a ringing endorsement, I don't know what is. Just buy the fucking game. Cheerio.